Hey folks, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is another Q&A. You all have been leaving lots of good questions in the comments, and I've gotten some email questions as well. Lots of repeat questions, so some of them have been kind of merged. So if you recognize part of your question, but it's not in your exact wording, that's why. So once again, I'm not referencing any of the names of the senders. I'm just reading off edited versions of the questions. Edited for brevity, not for content. But yes, so without further ado, I'm going to get right into the questions. So the first question is, what is your system for saving and organizing your artwork? So I'm assuming that this person is talking about original pieces, and for original pieces, I just put them in acid-free portfolios, and I have a bookshelf full of them, and yeah, I just kind of add to them as I create them. So if they're all in, what is that word? Chronological. They're all in chronological order. And yeah, it's a good way to keep them away from the light and keep them away from dust and stuff that might get on them. So yeah, I just make them and put them in these book portfolios and then put them on the shelf. So it's pretty straightforward. And as for digital organization, I'm going to go ahead and answer that too, because it's something that I'm actually thinking about right now. I have been just titling my files once I get them scanned in, and whatever seems like whatever title comes to mind. So if it's a tomato, I might just title it tomato. Or if it's 3 ice cream bars, I might just say 3 ice cream bars. And I do that so that it makes it so that it's easy for me to search by title. Or if I'm thinking of a particular piece because I was asked about it by an art director, or if somebody wants a print of it, it just makes it easier for me to find it, because I don't always remember when exactly I made a piece. You know, I can usually remember, oh yeah, that one was made a couple of years ago, but I'm not going to remember that was made in October of 2014. I just, my brain doesn't work that way. So yeah, so I've just been organizing them by title, but there are a lot of them. There are hundreds now because it's been years, hundreds and hundreds. And I'm starting to feel like maybe I should have been a little bit more organized in how I did the organization. So maybe I should have, in addition to title, had the date first so that they would kind of auto sort by date. So I don't know, I'm thinking through how I want to approach that, what I want to do, but they're all in Dropbox. I have the professional subscription to Dropbox so that I can just include as much stuff as I want in there and not have to worry about space on my computer. And with Dropbox, you can do selective syncs, so you can store stuff on the cloud and not have it take up space on your computer. And then I also have stuff on a backup hard drive and on iCloud. So I guess I have it in like 3 different places. Yeah, so for those of you who do a lot of digital work or who store your work digitally, how do you organize it? I would be very curious to hear, actually, just because I'm actively looking for a better system right now myself. So the next question is, what are your thoughts on Prismacolors and lightfastness? Now, I have been asked this question so many times, and I feel like it's coming up in people's consciousness a lot lately, because seriously, it's been multiple times just in the past few weeks. And I feel like this might be a little bit of a sensitive or controversial subject, just because I think people do have very strong opinions on it. And yeah, I will just say for myself that I know that certain colors of Prismacolor are not as light fast as other brands like Coranda Ash or, oh, what's the other one that everybody loves? I can't think of it, but I'll probably write it on the screen later. Yes, so there are colored pencils that have higher light fastness ratings, but when I use Prismacolor, first of all, I pretty much always, if I'm going to sell a piece, I spray it with a UV coating, a matte UV coating, and I also tell people up front to not store their work in direct sunlight, and ideally to put it behind a UV glass. So any artwork, no matter what it's made out of or no matter the rating, if it's in sunlight, it is going to fade. That will happen. So all artwork should be kept out of direct sunlight. That doesn't mean you don't have it on the wall, but you know, if your wall is directly facing a window that has sunlight coming in through it all day long, then that work probably will fade faster than if it were somewhere that didn't have as much light. So yeah, I take precautions, I take a lot of common sense. So I do the UV spray, recommend behind UV glass, but that is just kind of a fact of life with artwork. And the other reason I'm not too worried about it is because I am always mixing media. So almost never is one of my works just purely Prismacolor colored pencils. And some of the colors, many of the colors actually do have decent light fastness ratings. So mixed in all together with each other, with other media, with the spray, I'm not that worried about it. Also, many artists, a couple that come to mind are Eric Jones, and I can't think of her actual name. I think it's Tran something. I think her Instagram handle is Inlander. I'm sorry, my brain today is just gone, but I will put their names on the screen and in the description box. And they both are really successful, fine artists that have exhibited in many galleries, and both internationally and around the country. So yeah, they're big time names, and they both use Prismacolor colored pencils in addition to other media, just like I do. So so yeah, it is kind of a standard media. Lots of artists use it. And then my final thought on it is just that I have tried some other colored pencils, and even though I love my new set of luminance pencils, which are absolutely beautiful, I still probably slightly prefer the Prismacolor. The Prismacolor are just a little bit creamier, a little bit easier to blend, and the color range is wider. And yeah, so I haven't yet found another colored pencil that would draw me away from Prismacolor. So even with the pain in the butt with sharpening and how much of a hassle that is, yeah, I still like Prismacolors. So that was a bit of a long-winded answer, but I hope it was helpful and made sense. And yeah, I will go on to the next question. Once you send a contract to the client, do you only ask for a scanned version, or do you ask them to mail the signed contract to you before you begin with the project? So generally, I'm totally fine just with the scanned signed version. I don't feel like I have to have the paper copy. Some people do, and if you do, that's great. But for me, I'm fine with just the scanned signed version, and I save those. Those things I am actually good about organizing by date. I tend to do the year, so I would say like 2017, and then the month, so 2017.4. And then I'll have a space and then do the name of the client or the name of the project. So it kind of auto-organizes all of my contracts and letters of agreement. Yeah, so that's that. Next question, is it possible to turn a scanned illustration into a vector? So I'm trying to think of the easiest way to explain this. Basically, generally no, or certainly not for the kind of illustration that I do. So when you scan something in, it's going to be in a file format called raster. And this is the information that's in that file is pixels. So that file has little tiny dots. Like if you were to zoom in really close to the image, even if you've scanned it in at high resolution, at some point you will reach a level where you see the little pixels, the little dots. Well, actually they'll look like little squares if they're on your computer. If they're printed, they might look like little dots. But anyway. And a vector is, a vector doesn't record pixels, it records the information on how that image was made, so it can be reproduced at a larger and larger scale. So there really isn't a way to turn the kind of illustration that I make that's detailed, that has a lot of color and texture, there's no way to turn that into an infinitely scalable vector. So there are programs that if you were to do something simple like draw a circle, or it could be more complex than that, but just for the sake of explanation, just to do something simple like a solid circle and you scan that in, there are programs that can convert the raster scan into a vector, but it just wouldn't it's not possible with the kind of illustration that I do. So this person, I think, was asking for reference to their own work, of whether they should be converting their raster images to vector. And I don't know what kind of work you make. If your stuff is fairly simple, then you might be able to, and you could do infinitely scalable stuff. But if your work is more like mine, if it's more detailed, if it has texture, if it has color variety and kind of opacity to it, then it probably wouldn't work. If you're wanting to create larger versions of your work, you kind of have to start at the scan. So you need to scan in at a higher resolution. So rather than just scanning it at 350 dpi, you would want to scan it at like 720 dpi or even larger. So you'll need to do the math to figure out, you know, if you want to do something that's 20 inches by 30 inches, but the original drawing was only 5 inches by 8 inches, you'll have to figure out how many pixels across it needs to be at the larger size to figure out the density that you need to scan it in at. So this was a very technical question. I hope it made sense. Yeah, on to the next. When I scan in my colored pencil pieces, I get flashback. What can I do about that? So that means that when this person scans in their drawings, that there's a little bit of a kind of a reflection coming from the scanner. And that could be for a couple of different reasons. It could be the scanner itself. You know, I've only really used the scanner that I have, which I will link below. It's the same one I did a video about a while ago. I continue to use it and I like it. I probably will get another one in the next year or so, just because I've had it for a few years, but there's nothing wrong with it. It works great. It does everything I need it to. So yeah, I know that if I was having that issue with my scanner, the first thing I would check would be to make sure that I had the scan set to scan an opaque document, so, or an opaque thing, a photo, rather than, there's different settings. You know, you might have it set on a transparency setting, so maybe it's trying to scan negatives, but I would check the settings and make sure that it's set to scan something that's opaque. I think it's a reflective versus non-reflective. Sometimes you'll see that label on it, but honestly that could be different if it's not an Epson scanner. I think this person mentioned in their when they originally contacted me, that they had a Canon scanner. So I don't know what it would be for a Canon scanner. The best answer, honestly, is to just try different settings. So if you keep getting flashback, try another setting. If you have a good scanner, there will be a way to make it work, and lots of colored pencil artists scan their work. So it is possible. You just may not have found the right setting yet. So keep experimenting, and I wish I could say more specifically, but it's just hard for me to know without actually being there, seeing the piece, seeing the scanner, being able to mess around with the settings myself. So yeah, I would just say keep trying until you get it. Sorry if that's not as satisfactory of an answer as you were hoping for, but that's what I got. All right, next question. On Etsy, lots of sellers sell digital files that buyers can print out themselves. I noticed that you don't have this option in your Etsy shop. Do you get requests for it? Why have you chosen not to have this option available? So yeah, this is definitely very popular on Etsy. The print yourself option, or even people that sell their art as clip art. And if you want to do that, if that's your thing, that is totally fine. For me, I did not want to do that for a number of reasons. One, I feel like overall it devalues the work, and many of my clients want to know that, so if I license an illustration, this happened just recently actually, I licensed an illustration to a company who wanted to have the exclusive rights to it in their field. So they're in the food and beverage industry, and they wanted to know that I would not let anybody else in the food and beverage industry use that illustration. And I was able to do that because I have clear records of who has licensed which image, and I know which images have been used for what. So I could tell this client, yes, okay, you'll have exclusivity in the food and beverage market. But if that image had just been out there on my Etsy and people could download it and use it, I wouldn't have been able to offer that to the client because there's no way for me to take those images back. Even if the client was a big client and one that I really wanted to do, that stuff, once it's out in the world, it's gone and I can't control it. So in terms of commercial purposes, I have a lot more control and I can offer the client a lot more if I always hold the strings basically to who has licensed what image. And people have come to me on Etsy and asked, could they use an image for this or that? Could they license an image for their logo or something? And I'm more than willing to do that. But I can't just sort of have it out there in the world where anybody who wants to can buy it for $1 and use it for whatever they want. Yeah, so that just doesn't work. That just doesn't work for me in that situation. And then the other reason I don't want to do it, I don't want to do the print your own, is because I want to have control over how it looks. So I'm going to sound like a control freak here, but I want my art to look good and I want the prints to look as good as the original. So the best way for me to do that is to be involved in the printing myself and to approve all of the prints that are made. And if I let somebody download a printable version and they print it onto really crummy paper with a not very good printer, and then they're not happy with it, or if they have it in their home and it doesn't look good, and other people see it, yeah, it just I want to be able to have that final say over how my work looks. So those are the two reasons that I have decided not to do that. And your other question, do I get requests for it? I do get requests for it, but at this point in time, it just doesn't work for me. So, but that's just what I've decided to do. There are people with very different styles of work who make different kinds of work, and it works really well for them to do that. So this is just my path, and if that's working well for you, then more power to you. Next question. I have read that going with a name brand ink is best for quality prints, but do you have a method to find a cheaper ink? No, unfortunately, I just use the name brand ink. Again, because I'm selling stuff and because I want it to look really good, and yeah, I want the prints to look like the originals. I don't like to mess around. I just go for the name brand ink and a really nice paper, and that's kind of my secret to having my prints look good. And on that note, I mean, I'm pretty picky about not wanting to take any shortcuts with it. So, you know, sometimes even with the name brand ink, and if you're doing everything right and you have nice paper, you're going to have problems where the color doesn't quite match, or the color doesn't quite match the original, and you have to tweak that, or the ink tank splutters, or there's some kind of problem with it. That stuff is all going to come up anyway, even with the name brand ink. So I feel like, I don't know, because I've never tried using the off-brand ink, but my sense is that that kind of stuff would happen more often, and I don't want to deal with that because I don't want to waste paper, I don't want to waste time. So for me, going with the name brand ink is just the best option. And yeah, I think especially at the beginning, I would say if you're kind of trying to figure out your prints and you're doing a lot of test prints and having to mess with the settings, that may make it feel like you're going to go through a lot more ink than you actually will, because at the beginning you do have to do tons and tons of test prints. And you know, when I offer a new print, I have to do several rounds of test prints to figure out the settings and everything and how I want it to look. But on a regular basis, if you're just kind of making prints for an Etsy shop, you're not going to go through ink. I mean, you'll go through ink, but you're not going to go through ink like crazy fast. So try to kind of wade into it, give it some time, and see what your ink usage ends up being like. And ideally, if you're selling these things, then the prints are going to pay for the ink. So and then some. So that's my thoughts on that. Those are my thoughts on that. And the last question, when a client asks for additional revisions, how do you price those revisions? So I think I have talked about this in a video, whether it was my working with clients video or my contracts video. But basically, when I give the client the agreement after we've kind of gone back and forth broadly in broad terms and emails, and I give them the specific agreement that says like how long, what the project is going to be, what the outcome is going to be, how long it's going to take, what the fee is going to be, what it's going to cost them. I also have listed in there that they're going to get a certain number of revisions. Usually it's 2. And right below that, I'll say, if you go beyond this number of revisions, it's going to be billed at my standard hourly rate. So, and then this person had also asked if I try to discount that at all since it's just a revision, and the answer is definitely not, because I don't want to encourage the client to have more revisions. And that's not just like me lazily not wanting to do work. It's if somebody feels like they have, this has happened in the past, this happened to me quite a bit, unfortunately, when I was first starting out, because I would just give people as many revisions as they wanted. And in that case, I noticed that a lot of clients didn't really pay attention to earlier drafts, or, you know, if I was drawing something for them and they saw the sketch, they would just approve the sketch. And then once the color got added, or the first layers of color got added, they would actually want something about the sketch changed that they hadn't noticed before. So I feel like it actually, having unlimited revisions or having really cheap revisions encourages the clients to not really pay close attention when you're sending those initial sketches. So yeah, I just charge it at my normal hourly rate, and when they request the revision, if they give me some idea of what they're hoping for, I'll give them a ballpark for what it is, but they're not going to have like a really clear price tag the way that they do when an illustration first gets started. Like if just the basic illustration fee, that's always a flat number, almost always a flat number for me, so the client knows what it's going to cost. But if they ask for revisions, there may be some, it's a little bit more of a guessing game, because I may not know exactly what it's going to take, and usually that does open the door to more revisions. So I find that if a client asks for 1 additional revision, they're probably going to ask for 2 additional revisions. So and that's just kind of their working process, their personality. So yeah, so it's just by the hour, and I keep track of how many hours I spend on the revision, and then I add that to the final bill. And usually, hopefully, if you're working with clients, you're getting a deposit up front. And then that way, when you finish out the project, if they didn't ask for additional revisions, you would just bill them for whatever remains on the balance. And if they did ask for additional revisions, you would bill them for the balance plus the revisions. So yeah, that's it. I hope that makes sense. And I think that is all the questions for today as well. So thank you very much for watching. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff. And yeah, that's it. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.